Hey, it's Liz from No Trace. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these super adorable Christmas tree ornaments. This is a super fun project for using up your really small scraps of fabric, and it makes a really thoughtful gift too. Real quick, if you're looking for other ways to use up your scraps of fabric, click the description box below this video to snag 3 more free scrap fabric sewing project patterns. I saw some trees kind of like this on Pinterest, and I just had to figure out how to make them, and now I'm ready to show you. So let's go! In order to make your little Christmas tree ornament, you are going to need some scraps of fabric that are at least 4.5 inches wide. And if you're going to be piecing together pieces, you'll want several that are at least 4.5 inches wide. And then if you're going to use a solid piece of fabric, it also needs to be 5.5 inches tall, in at least one spot on the fabric. And then you'll also want a piece of batting that is about that same size, so 4.5 wide, 5.5 tall. You'll need a little scrap of brown fabric to make the trunk. This little piece of fabric is 2 inches tall, 4 inches wide, but you could make the trunk a different size if you're working with a smaller scrap or a larger scrap. So just some kind of rectangle of brown fabric. And then in order to make this little loop part, you're going to need some kind of ribbon. I made a little ribbon out of some yellow scrap fabric. You could make it out of red. You could even use some gift wrapping ribbon for this project. Now the first step is to sew your scraps together to reach a height of at least 5.5 inches. If you want to just use 2 solid pieces of fabric, you can do that instead. I'm going to be using scraps and 1 solid piece of fabric to make my Christmas tree ornament. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch these together. So all of my scraps are generally wide enough, 4.5 inches wide, and I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm just piecing them together kind of randomly. And all of my scraps are anywhere from 1 inch wide to 2 or so, or even 3 inches wide, so you can get creative with the different widths for your little tree. Once you've stitched together enough scraps so that your tree is going to be at least 5.5 inches tall, you're going to want to flip it over and then press open all the seams so that they lay nice and flat. Now that it's pressed and it lays nice and flat, what I'm going to do next is cut it down to 5.5 inches tall, because right now it's a bit taller than what I need, so I'm going to make it a little shorter. Alright, so this piece is the right height. So what we want to do now is we want to find more or less the center of this little piece of fabric here that we've created, and just do a little finger press so that you have a little crease at the center line there. So the other side of my tree is going to be a solid fabric, and I'm going to fold it in half as well, more or less. Find that center line, and then I'm going to put the center line of this on top of the center line of the solid fabric and line up the bottom edge there. And now I'm going to use the crease that I created in the pieced together fabric to fold the whole thing again in half. So now my little Christmas tree is folded in half, so that now we can cut a nice angle to get a symmetrical Christmas tree. So you decide whatever angle you want for your tree is great. I'm going to go from this top corner down towards my bottom corner, and I'm just going to cut straight across. So now I have a little Christmas tree shape. I'm going to make my tree a little bit more narrow because it's not going to work with the batting size. So I'm going to again fold it over in half and press it. And I really want this bottom width to be about 4.5 inches when I open the whole thing up. So I'm going to just sort of angle it a little bit more here to get a slightly more narrow base. And you can save all these scraps And if you're using all natural fibers, they can go in your compost, or you can actually stuff them inside your Christmas tree to give it a little bit more body. Okay, so now we need to pin our little 3-inch ribbon at the tip of our tree. So just fold back the top point and fold your 3-inch ribbon in half. Get it right in between the layers. You want it sticking out about 1/4 inch or so that you know you're going to be able to get a nice solid seam across the tag, because that's what it's going to hang from. So just go ahead and pin that in place. And then you also want to get your Christmas tree on top of your batting so that you can sew these together at the machine to give your Christmas tree a little bit more body and structure. So you could go ahead and pin it onto your batting, and then we're going to take it to the machine and stitch it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving about 2 or 3 inches open here at the bottom. So I'm just going to be stitching right on top of the batting with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to start at the bottom straight edge, but I do want to leave an opening. Make sure to do a back stitch at the start and the stop, and just go all the way around. Now when you get to the little ribbon spot, you want to make sure that you go across it a few different times so that it's really secure, and you can adjust it if your pin moved it around at all. So go ahead and, oops, make sure it's positioned well, and then just go over it a few times. Okay, so we've sewn the fabric to the batting, and now we just trim the batting. You also want to trim the corners so that you can get nicer points when you turn your tree right side out. And you can save all these little bits and also put them inside your tree if you want. Okay, and then we'll just turn this whole thing right side out. All right, so it's turned right side out. We just need to press this opening at the iron, and then we're ready to get the trunk in there and finish it up. It's already looking so cute. Okay, so that opening is pressed, and I also put all the little scraps inside my Christmas tree. Now we're going to take the scrap of fabric, and we want to iron it so that there's no raw edges. So we're going to fold it and iron it in half, and then we're going to open it and fold the raw edges in towards that center line that we just created, and then fold it again so that we get a little scrap with no raw edges on the long sides. So this is folded and ironed. Now we fold it in half so we have just a little trunk, and we're going to put the trunk in the opening of our Christmas tree, and then try to get it more or less in the center. You could measure and be precise, or you could just estimate, and then go ahead and get a pin in it. And then we're going to take this to the machine, and we're going to top stitch all the way around our Christmas tree. Once you've top stitched, your tree is done. You can trim any loose threads, and then it's ready to go on a tree. I would recommend using a little metal hook to attach it to your tree. You could also make a whole bunch of these and sew them onto a ribbon to make a Christmas tree garland. That would be super cute. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope it inspires you to get out there and put your scraps of fabric to use, turn them into something functional and beautiful. Don't forget to click on the description box below this video to snag 3 more scrap fabric sewing projects for free. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe to the No Trace channel to get notified about all of our new videos. We put out a new video every week on zero waste sewing, crafting, and lifestyle tips. So I'll see you again very soon.